Okay, let's see. It's 8 o'clock. And we're gonna get started. A couple of the folks who have bills are not here, so they won't start it off. I'm gonna ask Ms. Taylor. You mind opening us with a word of prayer? What you know?
Good morning, Heavenly Father. Thank you for this day that you've given us and for the ability to do the people's work in the state of Georgia. We ask you to give us wisdom and justice and the things that we need to be able to conduct the business of this state. Bless us to your service, and we ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. This machine up here is just a little crazy. You have to turn the microphones. You turn them on, then you turn them off, and then you turn them back on again in order to get that particular one to work. And I think number 27 or number 28 down there, you push that button and it goes bzzz. So we'll get it worked out, though. We've got 7 bills that, or 8, whatever it is, that we have to address this morning because time's getting short. Now, I want to commend those of you who have presented or done bills this year. The quality of bills is by far better than, overall, is by far better than bills we've seen in past years. In some cases, we've had to spend 2 and 3 and 4 weeks working on one particular bill to get it cleaned up, and so that so that we can present it to y'all to vote on. But this year we've been very fortunate that we've got some good bills. We had one bill that was tabled last week, and I'm gonna wait until a little bit further down the line because we've got other people who've got other responsibilities. We'll start off with House Bill 353, Representative Casey Carpenter. If you'll come up to the table there. All right, House Bill 353, Insurance, create the crime of staging a motor vehicle collision.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Committee. I have before you House Bill 353. The purpose of this bill is to codify staging a motor vehicle accident as insurance fraud. As you know, insurance fraud is already a crime, but many feel that this bill is necessary to enforce and deter staging these accidents. It costs consumers and small businesses billions of dollars every single year. In an article from last May, 43 people had been arrested in the state of Georgia alone trying to defraud U-Haul over a 2-year period. In those crimes, only 2 served time in jail. This bill will provide minimums that match current insurance fraud set at 2 years unless there is a personal injury, which will then be 5 years. As car insurance continues to rise in Georgia, I think that this bill will send a message that staging a motor vehicle accident will not be tolerated, and in turn should reduce car insurance rates for all Georgians. I would appreciate your favorable consideration on this bill, and we'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Okay, number 25.
Thank you. So, how do you prove that someone has staged a car accident?
So it's just based on collusion and evidence. That'll be up to the lawyers to do.
I'm just trying to get a better understanding as we're voting on the bill this morning. How do you can you give me some examples?
Absolutely.
Of one of these 43 cases that's defrauded U-Haul? I mean, is this something coming to support U-Haul, or does this happen to normal people?
Yeah, it happens to a lot of folks, but U-Haul is just a good incident. So what people do is they'll rent a U-Haul and then take the policy that U-Haul sells up to $1 million, and then their friends will go out and they'll run into the back of their friend's car. Their friends will sue U-Haul to collect insurance money. Happens all over the nation.
And then help me understand what other states have done on this. Any of our neighboring states? Is this something that is in their insurance codes?
I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't have that information in front of me.
Is that it?
I'll take a further question
Yes,
if I
ma'am,
may.
go ahead.
So on the penalties of a felony of 2 years imprisonment and then a felony of 5 years, you said that's consistent with insurance code. What other instances of
So
fraud
current
are
insurance
included?
fraud is 2 to 10 years, and so that 2-year minimum would match current law.
Right, so my question was, what are some of the other fraud incidents included in that code? For
So
2
it would
years
be
imprisonment?
like, so let's say you have inside fraud claims where people that work for the insurance companies are involved in defrauding insurance companies. That would be a 2-year minimum, 2 to 10 year.
Thank you for the general answer.
Yep.
23.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this bill. In my district, I have a small trucking company. They run into this all the time. They'll have someone cut them off, but it's a rear-end collision, and it's very hard to prove it. And they have a serious issue with this in their trucking company. And I appreciate you bringing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is something prosecutors have been looking for as well, just to give a little clarity.
26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have questions too around the mandatory minimums that you have in the bill. Number one, I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So on lines 30 and 31, you're saying that basically paper fraud would result in a 2-year mandatory minimum and a felony?
Actually, what that part does is it says that if you're involved in the lawsuit and you knowingly know that it's a fraud, that it's a 2-year.
Okay, and then, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
And then on lines 20 through 24, you're saying that the person who directly commits a fraud where it results in injury or death, that will be the 5-year mandatory minimum.
Yes, ma'am. Aggravated. Yes, ma'am.
And one final question, and Representative Cannon kind of hit on one of the issues. Obviously, you know, I have an issue with mandatory minimums in general, but again, to both of the representatives' point, this stuff is really hard to prove. And so there's definitely a concern about giving folks mandatory minimums when these crimes are really, it's hard to prove the intent.
I think that'd be up to the jury, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my concern was the same about the mandatory minimums.
Sure.
Okay, now if a person is not involved in this collusion, it would be almost impossible for them. I mean, what protections would they have?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, if they're not involved in it, then this wouldn't apply to them.
But you said it's the person directly involved. So if the person has staged and you don't know that the two people are staging an accident, yet you are an innocent bystander, there may be a third car. Could you get pulled in indirectly, or
I
is
think
that just left up to the courts?
Yeah, I think the burden of proof is pretty high in this. I mean, it's a tough situation, but the biggest thing is to give prosecutors something so they know how to follow, and then the burden of proof, of course, is up to the lawyers to prove.
Well, yes, my concerns was the mandatory minimums.
Sure, I understand.
18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the sponsor for bringing the bill, and we haven't had a chance to chat before, but anytime I look at a new criminal offense, I'm thinking, do we have overlap with an existing offense, and will we have a lenity issue? So if there's a new criminal offense we're creating that really has the same or very similar elements to another crime, that it might actually have the opposite impact of what we are trying to stop. And so we haven't had a chance to talk about this, and frankly, I haven't fully thought this through yet, but I'm wondering, have you run into any concern from the prosecutors or anyone else that say if someone is trying to commit felony insurance fraud and a death results, which would be aggravated under your bill, that prosecutor would then be unable to charge felony murder, which it seems to me would be a natural consequence under existing law. If somebody's committing a felony and it's reasonably foreseeable that a death or injury could occur and somebody does die, that a prosecutor would not be able to pursue a more harsh charge because of your bill.
I haven't spoke to prosecutors on it. What would be your suggestion?
Well, what I'd be willing to offer to do is maybe we could talk with the Prosecuting Attorneys Council or other groups that work on these bills going forward. I'd be happy to work with you, and maybe we could chat about that just to make sure there is an overlap.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a recommendation. We got a couple other questions, but I'd like to make a recommendation. In order for the sponsor and Representative Evstration to have a chance to discuss this. I'd like to table this bill, but we'll schedule another meeting, hopefully the first part of next week, because crossover is Thursday of next week, and we want to give a chance to get this bill out if it's possible.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
you.
Okay,
Thanks,
I
Chuck.
have, I have a motion to table the bill. Do I hear a second? All in favor, say aye. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Chairman Knight, I saw you walk in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tried to conspicuously sneak out.
I know you, he's one of the vice chairman of Appropriations Subcommittee, so he's supposed to be across the street right now. However,
I hope that Chairman England didn't see that. I'm not sure.
well,
how-
I seen him a text yesterday, he told him I wasn't gonna be there.
Uh,
Now, in regard to this bill, every year, or at least every other year, probably every year, we get a bill as it addresses pharmacy and pharmacy benefit managers. And over the last several of these, there has been a real good working relationship between the Pharmacy Association and the PBMs. And this is another example of that, in that, correct me if I'm wrong, but both parties are in agreement.
Yes, sir. I have watched the two parties, quite frankly, work very well together. As quite frankly, this can be a hot issue, but I will commend both sides. They've worked in quite frankly, a fashion I think we all should work in up here, and I greatly
Agreed.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief with this. If members will remember, we passed the Pharmacy Patient Protection Act out of this committee in 2017 and out of the House unanimously. And there were, it was basically trying to make sure that we protected the patient. I remember the clawback clause. Many of y'all, some of you new guys that may not have seen that, but there were provisions in this that were protecting the patients. And what we're trying to do here is come back in this bill and clarify and strengthen some of the mandatory mail order provisions. We want to make sure that first of all, there's transparency with the PBMs in connection with the rebates by requiring to report to the Commissioner of Insurance. We want to make sure that we're prohibiting the order and directing of clients to PBM pharmacy affiliates, and making sure that there's no sharing of patient information with the affiliate pharmacies for commercial purposes. And we making sure there's no misrepresentation of patients or providers. And most of all, as we look through this bill, we want to make sure that we're going back and we're adding this to make sure it applies to all types of pharmacies or dispensers. Many of us think of pharmacy as just a traditional pharmacy you walk in, but there are many different types of dispensaries too. One of the issues you've heard this year, and I know unfortunately Chairman Smith has had personal knowledge of it, but like an oncologist. And so we want to make sure we're enforcing and clarifying that this applies across the board. That's basically what the bill does. I'll stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
I don't see any lights on presently. Oh, 24. Yeah.
Good morning. Yes, ma'am. I think that is the committee sub. Yes.
Okay, I see no more lights. Oh, got 25. Shouldn't have said anything.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to see if this impacts something, a provider of medicine in my district. I'm just a little confused on the term. I know we've had this bill for a year or two. HIV medication that is given to patients after they've seen a doctor that has a pharmacy within that organization. Does this affect them having to describe the pharmaceutical companies giving them rebates or discounts on that?
Well, I think the rebate issue is a higher issue, a rebate from the PBMs back from the manufacturers, back to the insurance commissioner. But this bill should help in those cases. Probably the situation that you described with the HIV, going to a specialist, physician that specializes in that. Just like an oncologist, they typically are the ones that are wanting to make sure that they are prescribing and a lot of times administering, these drugs. So this should help in that situation, provide more choice and actually care for the patient at the physician level.
Thank you.
In regard to the oncology reference, I was talking to an oncologist there in Columbus, and he said, Richard, that a lot of my concern is that, we do a prescription, and the mail order, or when you go to the pharmacy, it's a 30-day. Well, after 5 days, the patient may not be able to take that particular product. So what do you do with that prescription that's sitting on the counter that costs $8,000 to $10,000? So in this particular case, as far as the oncologist, if the oncologist dispenses, he can dispense it, say, for 5 days, decide if the patient can continue to take it, and then switch, if they may switch, or they may continue that prescription, but they know if they can take it. 'Cause I can give you a perfect example. I know a man that had cancer. They tried him on several medications, and he would get deathly ill from all those medications for some reason. So he quit taking them. He could not take the medication. So he passed. But in this particular case, if they take it for 5 days and they're okay, then they can do for 30.
Yeah.
But
And it's also timing too, because
Yes.
sometimes with the mail order, it may take weeks to get that prescription back through the mail, where in the case of an oncologist, they've usually got it at the office.
yeah, they
And
do.
you can begin treatment immediately. So, again, we're making sure that we're taking care of the patient, and that's what I want to make sure that we're understanding, that in everything that we do here, especially with the healthcare issues that we have in the state and in this country, we've got to make sure that we are focused back on what's the ultimate purpose of healthcare. It is to make sure that we're taking care of the patient, and then everything else, should
Everything else
follow
will
that.
fall in place, won't it?
That's it. Well, and Mr. Chairman, you're right, and you and I had a great conversation, because, we've all had the experience. I've had experience with, my wife. You obviously, all of us have had those experiences. And when it comes to you, it's about that loved one, or it's about yourself, or about your family member, and that's ultimately why we're here. So
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Representative.
Okay, I see no more lights lit up. I guess it's time for a motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Be sure you go by rules.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Fry? House Bill 227. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I am bringing to you House Bill 227. It's LC 460056. We also have an amendment to address.
Yes, sir.
I believe.
Go ahead and present the bill, and then we'll do then you present the amendment, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Basically, there exists in our code section the idea that you cannot deny coverage or raise rates based on victims of family violence, domestic violence. And All this bill does is clarifies the code a little bit to include victims of sexual assault. If you look through the bill, there's really no major changes except for adding the terms regarding the sexual assault, 'cause sexual assault is not included in the family violence definition. And
That's all the bill does.
that's
isn't it?
all it does. Pretty simple,
Now,
simple stuff.
And in regard to your bill, I called the person who leads the Columbus Alliance for Battered Women and asked her about the bill, and she says, no, I very much support this bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr.
So-
Chair.
Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the sponsor. I appreciate you bringing the legislation. Can you tell me how many other states have this currently in their code?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking that question. We have currently in the code, there's 39 other states that specifically address victims of sexual assault in their code section regarding this. Several in the South. Some even go so far as to add the definition of it not being within the home. It could happen anywhere, and so that's what ours does. It allows it to happen anywhere, not just precluding to the home itself. Thank you for that
Thank you.
question.
Okay, very good. All right, looks like that cleared up the board here. Ready for a motion? Got a do pass and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Very good, thank you, sir. Don't forget to go by rules. And we have an amendment, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna have to cancel that last vote, but go ahead, do the amendment.
Okay, so the amendment addresses, if you look on line 120 of the original bill, the amendment addresses scratching the lines or sexual assault, the words or sexual assault from 120 and 121. What this does, when this original legislation was written, it gave a time period of about 24 months where all insurance companies were required to send out notification based on the new policy around domestic violence. And we're not necessarily going to ask the insurance companies to send out all the notifications to everybody just because of a little change in the law. And that's what this does. If we mark it out, it'll clear up any confusion regarding that.
Okay. I don't see any questions. I need a motion on the amendment. All right, got to move it. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, now, getting back to your original bill, as amended. Do pass as amended. I hear a second. All in favor say aye. Very good, thank you. Don't forget to go by rules.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee.
And you asked why I always, go ahead. You asked why I always say go by rules. Not everybody does that. You know, in order to get your bill before the Rules Committee, once it passes out of committee, you gotta go fill out this little form in rules. So, you know, we've had people that have bills passed out of here, and 3 weeks later or something, they haven't gone by rules yet, and then wondering why their bill hadn't made it to the floor. Well, that's why. Okay. All right, let's see. Well, Ms. Taylor, you got the boatload of the rest of them. You want to go down front? And I'd like to request that on the bills that you present, that the first two be those that are required for the insurance department to maintain its accreditation. And he can't come up. He's on my hit list for right now.
Okay,
But he can come up if you have a specific question to ask. Go ahead.
that's fine, thank you. We'll start with House Bill 367, and we're working off of LC 460065. And this is a NAIC regulation. We need to get this passed. This act requires to maintain accreditation. It will create a new annual filing for each insurer and provide that the Department of Insurance has a better understanding of each company. Right now, they only have to file every 5 years. And this will give the commissioner and the department a better handle on how the companies
And
are
it's the same basic form that they
That's-
have to do annually now versus every 5 years.
That's correct. it will give us a better handle and how the carriers are doing and how stable they are. That's basically what it is, but we do need it. It's called the Corporate Governance Annual Disclosure. So it's really just a technicality.
Okay, number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this affects small and large insurance companies. Can you help me understand what the process looks like for them to actually have to fill this out?
Well, it's every year you have to file a report now. That's what this is doing. And it gives you the stability. You have to look at what your assets are in the company, how their business is, what their loss ratios are, so that we can judge they're still financially sound and doing the things they're supposed to do. This gives the commissioner and the department that ability to do that. That's what it is. You just fill out paperwork and file it. Usually it's based on your audits, things like that.
And this is primarily for somebody like Allstate or State
Right.
Farm or something like that.
Right.
So then it's not small business,
No.
small
Well, it can,
insurance companies.
these are usually big carriers that we're talking about because it's corporate governance. It's no different. I'll do a comparison. I own a TPA, and I file these reports every year. You let them know your stability as a company, how your business is operating, and they can review and make sure that you're stable. That's basically what it does.
Actuarially sound.
Okay, I'm just trying to get clarification. Small insurance companies and large ones are only large
Yeah,
insurance
it's a
companies?
corporate governance. If you're a
Okay.
carrier in the state,
If you sell insurance
yes.
have a little place down the street and you may have 5 or 6 people working, you don't have to file.
Thank you.
But if you sell Allstate insurance, then Allstate has to file, not
Right.
you as an individual company.
Right.
Okay, 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really important. People obviously only pay insurance so that if something happens, the company can actually pay it out.
That's
And
correct.
we've seen instances where folks have paid premiums, paid money to insurance companies, and then you find out the company is not solvent and they go under when you have too many claims at once. So this is, thank you for bringing this. I do have a question. I want to make sure I'm understanding sections 85 through 93 correct, where it talks about what can be subpoenaed and what cannot be. The way I read it, it seems like it's saying that when you're subpoenaing information, you cannot, proprietary information cannot be subpoenaed, but like the fiduciary information can be. Is that basically?
That's correct. It just
Okay.
means if you have the confidential things, certain things you are allowed to protect.
Just proprietary stuff?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions. I guess it's time for a motion. Move, do pass. I hear second. Okay, all in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
What's your next one?
491.
Okay. Now, here again, this is another accreditation bill.
Yes, the NAIC accreditation standards require the adoption of this changes that were made in actually 2014, and it has to do with holding company systems to be effective January 1st of 2020. Currently, there are 26 states that have adopted this model. It's expected that the remaining states will have adopted it by 2020, which we need to make sure we do that. Georgia must adopt it. This changes allows the state of Georgia to act as a group-wide supervisor for internationally active insurance groups. The landscape of business is constantly changing and shifting. The insurance industry is no different. This new accreditation will allow Georgia to always be on the cutting edge of changes in the insurance industry. Adopting this standard will conform that Georgia has the authority to act as a group-wide supervisor of large U.S.-based international insurance. The changes are current models of regulations are limited under the new standards to premiums written in at least 3 countries. A percentage of gross premiums written outside of the United States is at least 10% of the insurance holding company's total gross written premiums.
That's a pretty big number, if I remember right.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
I went to sleep reading that bill last night.
Yeah, this is just, it's a technicality, but we need to get this done.
It has
really
to
can't
be,
wait.
from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to be passed by, or in place by January 1st of next year.
That's correct. That is correct. And it makes sure that these people, the carriers, We'll be monitoring. The department will monitor, know how they're doing. It's very similar. NAIC has a lot of regulations so that we know all insurance companies are operating in a similar, stable manner throughout the country. And this brings in some that are, we have international companies that want to operate here too, and this will help us be in compliance. We have to have it.
25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to understand, this gives the insurance commissioner the ability to act as that group-wide supervisor. And so what does the insurance commissioner say on this bill?
This is his bill. He wants it. We have to
Okay.
have it.
And then help me just understand, so what happens if we don't get the bill through the entire process?
It will make a major hit on the economy of Georgia because we have a lot of international carriers. And we want to make sure that we stay very stable and in the cutting edge of insurance. We don't want to lose any of that business.
Thank you.
15.
I waive.
Okay. All right. Don't see any more lights lit up. I guess it's time for a motion. Okay, that's a do pass, right? Okay. I hear a second. All in favor say aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank
All right, now, 368.
Okay. Thank you. This is a House Bill 368 sub, and we're working off of LC 460117 ERS. This is a bill that requires dividing insurers to develop a plan of division which must be approved by the commissioner. The plan of division requires components are contained in the bill, and it specifies the effects of the division, including how obligation and interest are allocated. The plan of division allocates assets and obligations between original insurance companies and any new insurance companies. The plan of division is a process that is legally distinct from a merger or a consolidation or a dissolution, and new insurers are deemed legal successors. What this does is if you have a carrier that offers the same line, maybe you have life insurance and disability, and you want to split the two companies. You want one to be the life and one to be the disability. You're allowed to, this would allow them to be able to separate it. Both of them would still have to qualify and reach the normal process to be a carrier that's allowed to be domiciled in the state. It just is a way for them to be able to divide it and be able to be in the types of business that they want to be in. The bill requires that the dividing insurers to pay any division expenses and costs. In order for the commissioner to approve a plan, the bill will require that each new insurer will be created by the division qualifying for and issued the license during the existing regulatory and financial standards. So all of those are still there. The department has reviewed this bill, and they feel that they're all the necessary authority. They have that, and they will have that ability to approve it and do what they need to do. There is similar legislation was passed last year. The governor did not sign it last year. His thought was we really didn't get an example of why, but this year, I think his real concern was probably the commissioner did not have enough authority, and we added additional information this year to make that the commissioner would have the authority to manage and monitor these, and that's what the bill does.
Okay. Well, and you're right, I think it maybe had one no vote in the House, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it had any no votes in the Senate. So it was well received. Number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. So the insurance company didn't manage their health risk appropriately, and that goes under, it would mean that their life business would not have to because it's
No.
a separate company?
No, it means that if you have a company that offers both and they're solid companies, they can split. There's different reasons why people would want to split off their lines of business. But no, if you're insolvent in one, they're not going to let you move all your assets over here and save one. That's not what this bill will allow. And the commissioner and their department will oversee this very closely to make sure something like that doesn't even be attempted to try.
So if there's an issue with one, would it be tied to the other? I appreciate you answering the first part of the question. But if there's an issue with one, like on the health side, will the life side automatically be involved?
Right now or in the future if they
If
divide?
this passes?
No, right now, if you have a company that's trying to do that and they're insolvent on one side or the other, the commissioner's not gonna approve this. That's not what this is to do, salvage one above the other. If you see that you're a solid company and you have business reasons for wanting to separate, other than financial losses is what you're looking at, no, this won't be approved because you have to be solid in both. Keep in mind that this is a division. It would be dissolving a. In this particular case, both sides would have to be solvent and stable, or it wouldn't be allowed. This is a division.
Oh, I see.
You see what I
Okay,
mean?
got
It
it.
would be like taking one department and another department and separating them.
That answers my question. I was
Thank you.
basically trying to ask if you were in trouble on the health side, would that be isolated to just the health side, and you could be doing great on the life side and be able to just junk the health side
No.
because you've gotten in trouble? But you answered it. They're still connected.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, very good. See no more lights. For a motion to do pass or whatever. Move do pass. All right, thank you. So got a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. All right. Well, we've taken care of everything but one, and that was one that was tabled last week. And I need a motion to bring House Bill 84 off the table. Got a move to have a second? All in favor say aye. Okay, well, I'll go down and let y'all know what the changes are on 84.
You ain't got any amendments?
No.
No arbitration?
No.
The chairman is bringing us a new bill that we hadn't heard before. Chairman Smith is bringing us House Bill HB 84, and we're working off of LC 460114S.
Yes, sir.
That is correct. Chairman Smith.
Okay. If you remember last week when this bill was being presented, Floor Leader Reeves, who's a very good attorney, caught something on starting on probably page 7, line 209, 209. And the only part there was in 209 where it said initiate arbitration. That is still in there, but in order to reduce costs for arbitration, and he said arbitration can be quite expensive, he recommended, and some other attorneys looked at this also, and that was their recommendation too, as far as dispute resolution, that the alternative dispute resolution may be initiated by the patient or the person who's responsible for paying the bill within 90-day period after, by filing an application with the commissioner. Now, this arbitration, mediation, or whatever they decide to do will go through the insurance commissioner's office. They have arbitrators, dispute resolution folks over there who do this all the time. And then the commissioner will develop the rules and procedures for handling this alternative dispute resolution. And then in this process, then both parties are responsible for half the cost, and the decision of the alternative dispute resolution under this code section shall be final. Now, saying that, this is one mechanism, but there are other mechanisms that you can dispute something. So, but this is what is recommended by the attorneys who looked at this. And, you know, I go over the rest of the bill if you want to, but everybody, we've heard this bill for the last 3 years. And as far as I know, the only group who's opposed it is Medical Association of Georgia. Hospital Association is approves it, and the Hospital Association is the one who has to do the majority of the work with this procedure. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I'd like to say, in my short 5 years down here, I've never seen anybody work any harder, take more calls, and spend more time on anything than you have, and I appreciate your diligence, and and bringing this before us.
Well, the only reason I do this on this particular issue is because of the patient. When you have patients go in and have a procedure done and they have no clue of what the price is gonna be when they get home, they get a $5,000 bill, they get a $10,000 bill, and they had no clue it was coming. My goal is to stop that. And they at least should know what the fees are gonna be if they have them, and I'm gonna continue to fight it.
Thank you, sir. Number 25.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for working on this. You have been very diligent, and sorry if I haven't come to your office to ask you about this, but I just do have a few questions that are a little general. So we have been working on this for the few years. Does this address emergency care? 'Cause
No,
that
ma'am,
was-
this is only for scheduled procedures currently. Now, there will be legislation coming probably next year as it addresses emergency rooms. But this is scheduled procedures that you go in to have a tonsillectomy or something along that line, that you know you're gonna have, knee replacement, whatever that you schedule in advance.
Okay, so I remember this looking like something from last year then, didn't we have a
Yes,
floor
ma'am,
sub that was
this
like-
passed last year
Okay,
with one no vote in the House.
I wonder where it came from.
Yeah, okay. I'll let you speculate on that.
And one more question. So what's the Senate readiness on this version? I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked to any senators on it.
I haven't talked with any senators either. They've got a different bill over there. It's Senate Bill 56, that has I think has some real constitutional issues with it. We'll wait. I think it passed out of insurance committee yesterday. So we'll wait to see what happens.
Thank you.
Number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the author of the bill, Chairman Smith, I want to thank you for your leadership and efforts on this part. Having been in the property and casualty insurance world for 30 years and some in the life and health, people continue to call me because of the insurance hat I've worn for so many years and describing to me these problems they're having, and I appreciate your leadership both last year and this year in moving this issue forward. So at the appropriate time, I'd like to move due pass.
I see no further light, so at that time is appropriate.
Due pass.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of HB 84 signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. No. There was one
no.
One no. Okay, we'll make a record of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Be sure and go by rules.
I'll go by rules.
And we are adjourned, or if that's what the chairman wants to say, and we may be scheduling a meeting early next week to help some folks out.
Yes.
Like, if Representative Glanton gets back, I want to give him a chance to fix his bill and have a subcommittee meeting and try to get it through for him.
Yeah, he's been sick, and
Yeah.
we'd like to work with him on that, and Representative Carpenter.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.